What's going on, everyone? People are losing their fucking minds, so let's just get right into it. A couple hours ago, Trump launched a attack on a Syrian airfield in retaliation for the alleged use of chemical weapons that the Assad government is being held accountable for. Most of the information about the chemical attack is coming from Turkey, which is not trustworthy. Not with Erdogan in charge, and don't see him personally as a very reliable source. I'll post a link down below to a great article I found on UNZ, pointing out a lot of flaws in the report that various activist groups from Turkey and international activist groups. Flaws in the evidence they've presented that this was a chemical attack that killed lots of people. For the sake of this video, though, since there does seem to be evidence that there was an attack, let's say that's true. There was a chemical attack that killed a couple dozen people in the Syrian town of Khan Shikonoun. Fuck it. You'll find it if you Google it. So in the town of fucking Syrian, brackets fucking Syrian, chemical attack happens. Trump launches a airstrike against the airfield that supposedly the planes flew out of, the Assad's planes flew out of, in retaliation. There's not going to be an invasion of Syria. There will be no boots on the ground. Calm your tits, relax. This was not a prelude to war. Reason why I'm saying that is that if the purpose of this attack was, they used Tomahawk cruise missiles, by the way, not U.S. aircraft. I don't know if I pointed that out or if I said airstrike. It wasn't an airstrike. It was a missile strike. Anyway, this is not a prelude to an attack. This did very little to any damage to the Syrian aircraft or the infrastructure. I think there was two fuel depots, two fuel depots that ended up getting blown up in the process. No reports of any casualties from either Syrians or Russians who might have been stationed there. No reports whatsoever, so not sure what to make of it. Well, that's not true. I know what to think I make of it. I think this is a show of force. Trump has always said that he wanted his foreign policy to be unpredictable. He's also said that he doesn't believe in toppling foreign governments. Now, this is iffy because he's surrounded himself by a lot of neocons. I think half of his fucking advisors are from the fucking Zionist shield at ZRF or some shit. So he could have been compromised. That's possible. Maybe it was all a lie. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to admit I'm wrong. That is a potential possibility. But I'm not coming off the Trump train on this. Not yet. Not until I have more information. So the reason I think this is a show of force is because, like I said, Trump always said he wanted to have his foreign policy be unpredictable. And this did surprise a lot of people. Now, the truth is, in realpolitik, gotta break some eggs, it makes sense for him to launch this attack on this small airfield as a demonstration that chemical weapons will not be tolerated. Now, this is why I think it's 4D chess. The Russian government has recently come out and said, following this attack, that its commitment to preserving Bashar al-Assad's regime is not unbreakable. I forget the exact word they used. Or that it can be lost if certain conditions are met. Bashar al-Assad is, heavily dependent on Russian aid in order to fight ISIS and the rebels. And it simply does not make sense for him to fuck things up. Whatever you think of Assad, He's not stupid. He launches a chemical attack on civilians in Khan Sheikh Sound, something. That's the one thing that could actually, gear up people to support a land war in Syria. Like, that is possible. It's too stupid. And like I said before, he's winning the war in Syria. He is pushing back the quote-unquote moderate rebels, which are just jihadists, and ISIS, who are far more deplorable than Assad's regime is. No, I'm sorry. But a secular autocrat is vastly preferable to a jihadist government. It simply is. I wish the world was different, but not every culture can have a republic. Not every people in the world can, uphold a democracy or a relatively free society. It's not possible. Not every culture is compatible with it. So, I think this is a 4D chess move as a way of showing force and getting people to take Trump seriously. Also think how this completely destroys the narrative that Trump is a Russian spy, or a Russian plant, or that the Russians, helped to put him into office. It ruins the narrative. If he was a Russian plant, why would he launch an attack on an allied state of Russia? Doesn't make sense. It's so obviously wrong. It's so obviously backwards. Even average people who don't know what the fuck is going on at all will look at that and go, hang on, that doesn't add up. I'm going to predict that they're going to change the narrative. They'll probably say something ridiculous like, Putin asked Trump to attack Syria to disprove the idea that he's connected to him or something like that. They're not going to give it up because they are, the chicken shits are desperate for a war with Russia. I mean, have you seen a map of, all our military bases around their country? How inconsiderate of them to put their country so close to our nuclear weapons. I mean, come on. Bunch of assholes, right? But yeah, this is a 4D chess move. This is simply too out of character. I can't see Trump going back on his word this early. It just doesn't make sense. And Trump has a tendency to do things that don't make sense at first, but in retrospect seem really fucking obvious. It's like, why didn't I get it? It's why the phrase 4D chess exists. Now, as a show of force, this will be particularly effective. It completely destroys the narrative that he's a Russian plant, which, even though it wasn't really successful at first, because the MSM continuously keeps unendingly, just never ending, beating it into your heads, people start to believe it. It's like the, screaming pedophile at someone long enough, even if it's all nonsense. People are still going to feel uncomfortable about leaving their kids with them, even if it's always been a lie. Just keep screaming it enough, and it's going to start to leave an impact. So I think that was a consideration. Another consideration, possibly, would be that while this attack is going on, he's having dinner with Xipeng, I think that's how it's pronounced, the quote-unquote communist, quote-unquote president of communist China, which is to say he's not a president. It's not a democratic country. It's an autocracy. So at best, he's an autocrat. At worst, a dictator. While all the brouhaha that North Korea is creating by acting like North Korea, people might get the impression that he would be unwilling to use force. Now, this is just a sad reality of politics. Reagan was a generally very peaceful president, but he did use force when he had to. The only way bullies understand strength is by a show of strength. They presumed, or most authoritarian / tyrannical governments take kindness for weakness. That is true. That's not to say I think, wanton destruction of the Middle East is acceptable. And there's not smarter ways to go around solving or combating that image. But it is something that I think Trump wants to cultivate. Because if Trump can cultivate an image that his foreign policy is unpredictable, then it's an incentive to bring foreign governments to the table to work things out diplomatically, rather than what we've kind of seen from Obama, which is general, lack of any kind of respect. I mean, this is a pretty low-hanging fruit, but there was a bunch of times, I think it was in Saudi Arabia, where he lands and nobody's out there to greet him. Small things like that. Those things matter in politics, or in geopolitics. Now, like I said, people need to calm their fucking shit. This is not a prelude to war in Syria. This is 4D chess. There's more things going on than you might be aware of. Calm down. The world is not ending. Put your canteens down. Don't go into those fallout shelters. Put down the laser rifle. Stop stockpiling bottle caps. You're going to be okay. World isn't going to end. Now, let's look at the utility of this decision domestically, aside from the MSM and aside from, foreign relations. Trump, I think Trump has to be aware that various neocons are trying to kind of encroach themselves onto his government, or his government team. I feel like this might be, I suspect, I don't have no proof of this, I'm just thinking. I suspect this might be a 4D chess move to test the waters, so to speak, and to maybe see, who's really just a shill. I don't think I'm articulating this well. It's a way to kind of draw out the snakes from out of the grass, you know what I mean? So if he knows, or if he highly suspects that this is a false flag operation, which is totally possible, I'll leave a link down below to an article I found on UNZ that breaks down a lot of the inconsistencies and holes in the story that's presented by the Turkish intelligence community and the various other activist groups, that this was a sarin gas attack on civilians. It's a really great read. I recommend you check it out. But anyway, if he can successfully draw out the people who want war in the Middle East and war with Russia, and if he can expose them to the public so that their image degrades, if it later comes out that this was a false flag operation, I can see Trump maybe coming ahead of this, on top of things, if you know what I mean. I don't know if that's true, but yeah, I think I'll close it off here on that note. I am not off the Trump train. Let me say this: if there is a ground invasion of Syria and I'm totally wrong, then I will eat my hat on the internet. My process of how I come to decisions, totally flawed. I'll rescind my support, and I don't even know if I'll fucking care too much about politics after that, because clearly, if I was wrong about Trump, even with all the right signs, then there's no one else on the fucking field who can maybe do it, or could actually be sane in our foreign policy. So yeah, that's why I don't think Trump's not going to topple the government. This was a show of force to maybe get Russia to communicate with them again. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, Trump shared the intel that he was going to attack this airfield with the Russians ahead of time. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm going to invade somewhere, I'm not going to tell them I'm coming. Bad idea. If you're going to rob someone, don't give them a heads up that you're coming to, steal the shit out their house or whatever. I think the reason why, because he wants to talk to the Russians, get them to come to the table, while at the same time, he wants to broker a peace with the Russians and to get some sort of cooperation going so that, the destruction of ISIS can, get sped up along faster than it's already happening now. But he doesn't want to do that while the media keeps screaming about how much he's a Russian plant and how much they keep drumming the beats of war against him. It's unfortunate, but there are a lot of people who would probably fall for that. There probably is such a thing as Russophobia or something like that in America. A bunch of old fucks from like the 70s and 80s who, I don't know, like just don't like Russia. I've seen comments like that from older folks. So it's something to consider. So yeah, he wants to simultaneously prove that he's not a Russian plant while getting Russia to come to the table and, you know, enter some sort of cooperation. Because keep in mind, you know, the Russian government lost all faith in the Obama administration and became incredibly reticent to any kind of communication or any possibility of, you know, working together. I don't know. These are just my ideas. So yeah, I think this is 4D chess. There's no invasion of Syria. It's not going to topple the government. People are having flashbacks to Iraq. I get it. Calm your tits. It's going to be okay. That's all I got, guys. Peace out.